Live to see it, friends, and welcome to The World Transformed. This program is your guide to an astounding future that lies ahead, one that will be here sooner than you think, and one that you have an important role to play in bringing about. So, when does this amazing future begin? Well, today is the day. My name is Phil Bowermaster, and with me in the virtual studio is my co-blogger, co-futurist, and co-host, Stephen Gordon. Hello, Stephen.
Hey, Phil, how are you?
Well, I'm super fantastic. How are you, my friend?
Great, man. Great. Enjoying these shorter programs. More bite size. I think the audience may enjoy them as well.
Yeah, I'm liking that we're on video too because I now find I'm watching us. You know, I'm listening sometimes. I listen on my iPhone, and I've been watching. I'm kind of hooked. This show's addictive, at least for me. These guys are good. Actually, that's what I always say whenever anyone walks into the room and I've got it on like my laptop or something. That's always my hey, listen. These guys are so good. That's that should be our if we ever do a marketing campaign, I think that should be our
World Transform. These guys are good.
Yes, but we're doing 30-minute shows. We're on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. It's nice to have you here with us on a Wednesday evening, and we're doing an exploration of the transformations that are coming, the kinds of transformations and how we deal with them. We talked on Monday about telepresence robots, and we matched it to our 7 transformations. And tonight we're going to talk about some predictions from a noted futurist from here in the Denver area, and we're going to check those against our strategies for how we deal with transformations. We've got a set of strategies that we've put together around how we react to a coming transformation. So we're going to see how these predictions that have been put in place. The man's name is Thomas Frey, and you should definitely check out his site. It's called futuristspeaker.com. He did a post called 33 Dramatic Predictions for 2030. And we're going to take a look at some of those, and we're going to say, well, what do we make of these changes? Are these futures that we're excited about? Are these futures that we're scared about? Futures that we're ready to sign up 100% for? 40% for, 20% for, or that we want to avoid at all possible costs? And Stephen, you had a chance to look at Thomas Frey's article. What'd you think?
I would say that most of these things I'm excited about, and I guess you just kind of do a quick overview. I mean, it's just most of this I found believable and positive. I'm glad to say. I hate it when it's believable and very negative.
Yeah, well, that's and all too often the really scary stuff can be extremely plausible. What I liked is he starts off with a couple of paragraphs. Let me just read a little bit of this because I think this is very telling. He says, humanity will change more in the next 20 years than in all of human history. By 2030, the average person in the U.S. will have 4.5 packages a week delivered with flying drones. They will travel 40% of the time in a driverless car, use a 3D printer to print hyper-individualized meals, and will spend most of their leisure time on an activity that hasn't been invented yet. Well, you've totally got me hooked already in that first paragraph. But then actually, as you continue reading, you realize he's faking us out. These aren't his real predictions. He's giving us a bunch of scenarios that sound plausible, that sound like the kinds of predictions people could make. And then he says, now let me give you my 33 actual predictions for the future, some of which sound kind of like these, and some of which are in a completely different space. And the reason for that is he's making a point about what you have to bear in mind when you're making a prediction of the future, and also what you have to bear in mind whenever you hear someone's prediction for the future, or when you're thinking about evaluating someone's prediction for the future, especially when they get very specific like that. We're going to get, what was it, 4.5 packages delivered each week by a drone. Where did that number come from?
4 or 3 or
it averages out to
4.5.
Well, it's like the average family with 2.3 kids. Yeah, it's just that's how it averages. It's because I would get 4 and you would get 5. See,
I guess.
And there would be the 4.5. But yeah, that it would average out to anything in particular. There have to be numbers leading up to that. All of these predictions are based on assumptions. And what's great, the thing that Tom does here, is for a lot of these, he gives a link to more information on where the assumptions behind his predictions come from. And on a few of them, frustratingly, he does not. He lays it out there, and we get to do our own thinking around them. And that's part of the discussion that we'll be having tonight. But did you have a personal favorite or a personal scariest one from the list of 33?
Um, I don't find too many of these very scary at all. Maybe the cryptocurrency might be slightly. There's some scary implications with Bitcoin and Bitcoin-like services that there's some scary implications with that. There's a couple of things I found hard to believe, but not particularly scary. Why don't we? We got 33 of them in a short show, so maybe we should just
Oh, we're not going to do all
start
33.
in.
We're going to do a few select ones, but
Okay. All right.
my one that caught my attention was that by 2030, marijuana will be legalized in all 50 states in the U.S. and half of all foreign countries. And I look at that and I think, well, it might. And I haven't read the article that provides the rationale for that, but it's really got to pick up the pace if that's going to happen. If that's going to happen, we're in the very early days of it accelerating in terms of acceptance, and maybe I don't see it, but I will be surprised if that happens by 2030. But
Well, I mean,
stranger things have happened.
I think some of the assumptions that have to be found to be true is that by legalizing marijuana, it doesn't turn into the gateway drug to get more people into much worse things that a lot of people have argued for many years that marijuana is.
Hmm.
And if it turns out that legalizing marijuana does not result in any more heroin addicts or crack addicts, then maybe then other states will look at the Colorado experience and say, you know what, we need that tax money too, and you can see those dominoes falling very fast if it turns out that it's number one, it's not that bad. It doesn't turn into Colorado doesn't turn into Mad Max post-apocalyptic wasteland because of that. Then I think other states get to see how much tax revenue is brought in. It could happen quickly.
It could. It could. I, I'm not persuaded. Put it that way. Here's one I am completely persuaded about. I'm excited to see the prediction, and I think it's spot on. By 2030, over 90% of all restaurants will use some form of a 3D food printer in their meal preparation. I don't dispute that at all. I bet that it will make up a large part of what goes on in restaurants, especially like fast food type restaurants. But probably every restaurant will be using 3D food printers, and we will think of those as being as essential to a kitchen as we currently think of as an electric mixer or a blender or a refrigerator, possibly.
I don't know. I don't really follow. And let me take the counter argument then, Phil.
Okay.
I can understand why there would be food preparation robots, and I'm not talking about like a humanoid type android that's sitting back there slicing onions or something. I'm talking about it looks like a oven basically, and you just put the food in one end, and it fixes the burger and then puts it together and wraps it in saran wrap and delivers it to the customer. It's I could see something like that quicker than I could 3D printing robots. What does a 3D printer give you? If you're selling burgers, for example, that you wouldn't get from just a food preparation robot.
Well, I think what a 3D printer will give you is it gives you food of any shape, for one thing. It gives you all these options around shape and texture and color that would be difficult to achieve by any other means, and that probably our expectations around what gets served to us are going to change in line with that.
Okay.
But probably that won't be main courses, right? If you go to a nice steakhouse, you don't want them to 3D print a steak. I don't think we'll be to that point yet. But you might be really disappointed if the French fries aren't 3D printed, or maybe they are. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it won't be as big a deal as I'm thinking. But I think once the capability is there, I think we'll find a lot of uses for it. Particularly with things like bread, with desserts. I think actually there it is. There's my argument. They're all going to be making desserts with 3D printers because
Okay, there you are, and beautiful. You can make some beautiful creations with a 3D printed food. I saw maybe it was something you shared with us maybe a month or two ago. It was like 3D printed desserts that like moved and like it looked like sculptures
that wasn't
that
me.
breathed and everything.
I haven't seen that. That sounds kind of scary,
amazing.
actually, kind of
It was
creepy.
it was a little bit creepy, but
Yeah.
creepy beautiful. And it's if people really get to where they like that sort of thing, and it can be done economically, even in like a normal restaurant that that people can afford to go to on a regular basis, I could see that sort of thing really taking off. But yeah, like you say, you don't need it for a 3D steak, 3D printed steak. You wouldn't need it for a 3D printed hamburger necessarily. Maybe the bun. I don't know. So
Possibly for the
that
bun. Uh,
possibly for the bun.
we'll see. We'll see. That anyway. I'm enthusiastic about that one. So perhaps
Okay.
my enthusiasm clouds my vision of the future. But I hope that's true. I'm looking forward to 3D printed food. So once again, our four basic reactions to a particular prediction for the future, particular scenario or transformation that is handed to us are as follows. The first one is Soylent Green is people. This is our complete rejection scenario.
Yeah.
Then there is one we call no, 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 unless, and that is our we're going to reject it unless certain very stringent conditions are met. Then we have one called yeah, let's do this if, and that means we accept it, but certain conditions have to be met. So there's a lot of gray area between those middle two. And then finally, there's one I call to infinity and beyond, and that means just flat out enthusiastic acceptance. Now, I have run a number of Thomas's predictions through through this filter, and I've got a few I want to talk about. Unfortunately, of the 33, I couldn't find any to put in the category of Soylent Green as people. I don't see any that were so horrible and offensive to me that I had to just completely reject them. There's some that I'm pretty concerned about, but none that I would put in that category. Stephen, did you see any that you would place there?
None. I mean, for example, the 3D printed food. I mean, what's objectionable about that to anybody?
Right.
And there's a lot
Well,
of
food
things
should
that,
be hard work. That's what it's objectionable about, Stephen.
or maybe if you're a food worker, if you work in the fast food industry and you're afraid of getting replaced by a robot, then maybe you don't like that. But beyond that, there's not too much objectionable about that. So no, I didn't find any in that list that was I would just completely reject.
Okay. So my first one, the first category I hit is the no, 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 unless. And that one I would apply to this prediction. He says by 2030, democracy will be viewed as an inferior form of government. Okay. Now I read that one and I say, okay, there's a lot of different ways to read that one, but when would that ever be good news? Someone, I think maybe it was Winston Churchill who famously said that democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others. Now, if we're going to reach a future where it's the inferior form of government, what's going to be the superior alternative to that? And to me, it's only really an improvement if you're talking about something that actually allows people even more freedom than they have under a democratic regime, and that is somehow more fair. That promotes freedom and justice better than a democratic government is. What that would be? Well, I don't know how that would work. I'm not entirely sure. But there are plenty of people in the world already who view democracy as an inferior form of government because they like governments that are less free, and they like people to, and they don't care as much about justice, and they don't care as much about human rights or kind of the principles that the United States and other countries are founded on. And if that's what he's saying, then that's not a great future at all. Okay, if the prediction is that authoritarian governments are going to win out, I count me as not being on board.
Yeah.
I think that sadly
What?
these days you'll even see people within democracies, people who come from the West and are functioning within democracies, who seem to kind of have this preference. They'll talk about how great China is and how well they do certain things, and if only we could be more like them. And you see this admiration for countries like Singapore, which, not to say these countries don't have admirable qualities or that they don't do admirable things, but when you start to say, yeah, if we could just tone down this whole everybody has the right to say what they want to say, or everybody gets a right to vote, and not have their property taken away from them by the government, or whatever the abuse might be. I think you're heading in a really bad direction at that point.
Um, you know, the argument can be made that there are no pure democracies anywhere in the world at all.
Right.
What we tend to have is a republic where you have representatives that we vote into office that then call the shots, and that you know decisions on the day to day or minute to minute are not made by the voters. They're made by our representatives, and that's what a republic is. Maybe maybe if you're talking about something like that, I mean, but I mean,
If that's
still,
what actually, if that's what's meant, then even our founding fathers thought democracy was an inferior form of government, right?
that's right.
That's hardly a
Yeah,
prediction for the future. I agree. We're using the term democracy in a very broad, very crude kind of way here to include
yeah,
like the U.S., which by definition is not a democracy, right? I
yeah.
mean, it's not intended to be, and that's a good point.
You
Um,
know, I'm willing to go back on what I said earlier, and if that's the way we're defining this, then I'm going to throw this in the Soylent Greenest people category for
okay.
myself, and just say that you know what, I would not at all be happy with less freedom and less individual justice in exchange for more centralized power. To me, one of the great things about technology is that it tends to empower the individual, and my hope is that with greater technology, the individual sees more power, and it won't be used as it sometimes has been to centralize power. But
Now, I'm going to keep it in this category only because I hold out a sliver of hope that there could be a system that's better than anything we have right now that we haven't thought of yet, and that's actually what he's talking about. Hopefully, that's
okay,
that's my extremely optimistic slant. And also, there are models for future forms of government that we haven't tried up to date. The one that comes to mind is the adhocracy that we encounter in Cory Doctorow's book, Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom. Now, how that exactly works isn't made clear. You just see it working in the course of the book, and it seems like it's fairly democratic anyway. At least it's got characteristics in common with democracy, but it's different from the kind of highly structured democracies we live in now. So we might add some scare words to that, and we might say that by 2030, traditional democracies would be seen as inferior, or the constitutional democracies that we used to have back in the 19th and 20th century will be seen as inferior because we'll have something that's enabled by technology. Certainly in that book, in that world, those people were as free as anyone could possibly be. They were enjoying a pretty good life there. But whether that system is superior to ours or not, I'm not sure because it's a fictional system. We don't really know we don't really know the specifics, do we?
no, we do not.
Okay, so do you have any others, Stephen, that you would throw in the no, 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 unless category?
No, no, I think that, again, I'd probably move it over into the Soylent Green category myself, and the democracy, uh, uh, example. But no, no, I think we can move on to the next one.
Okay, now the next response to a transformation, the next strategy for dealing with them is to say, yeah, let's do this if. And I apply that one to this prediction. By 2030, we will have seen the revival of the first mated pair of an extinct species. And I say, yeah, let's do this if the extinct species we're talking about is the passenger pigeon or the dodo or some other species of bird or other animal that we've mourned the loss of over the last century or the last 2 centuries. And we've, via technology, we're able to kind of correct that mistake, bring that species back by mating a pair from two members that have been cloned back into existence. Awesome. Um, where where I start to get a little cautious is if we're talking about doing it with a woolly mammoth or a saber-toothed tiger, something from a long time ago, because we live in an ecosystem now that's completely different from that, and how would those fit in? Um, but that still might work
Zoos.
because yeah, you can put them in a zoo. We have
Yeah.
zoos. As long as zoos are going to exist, that would still be a possibility, and it would be awesome to see a mammoth or a saber-toothed tiger or a lot of those mammals from an epoch back or so. But what if they start saying, yeah, we can do this with Neanderthals, right? What if they say we can do this with an even earlier human species? We can do this with Homo erectus, for example. Then I think you got a real problem because what are we
Yeah.
going to do with these humans that are human but aren't quite human?
Yeah, you can't put them in a zoo, and
Right.
if they can't really adapt to the modern world, then you know, to me, there's it's just cruel, and I don't see that as being something that should be legal at all. So yeah, I agree with you completely to put this in that category. Bring back all these neat things that we would love to see, or that are mistakes that we've made recently, where we've lost a species. Bring all those back, but former human species, no, I don't believe that that could be done in any way that could be ethical. And
You
so
know,
I would say leave that alone.
we were talking on Monday about the Uncanny Valley, and this kind of relates to that. There's too close to us to mess with. I think that there's such a thing as it's like I would be more comfortable for someone setting up Jurassic Park and bringing the dinosaurs back than someone setting up Neanderthal Park and bringing them back, because it just seems like
Well,
this issue got solved through evolution, and this is not a thing to be revisited.
well, it's much too close to slavery. You're bringing back people for the sole purpose
Of yeah,
of experiment. Not
gawking
for
at them. Yeah,
not for their own good.
right,
You're bringing them back to serve some purpose that we may have,
right.
and that's way
That's
too
wrong
close.
because they're people. Yes.
They're people,
Yeah.
and that's way too close to slavery. Let's not do that at
Now
all.
our animal rights activist friends, or people who tend in that direction, animal uplift and those kinds of issues, would say that that applies across the board to these other species as well. But for them,
Historically, it hasn't.
yeah,
That
traditionally
is
it
a very
hasn't.
new viewpoint.
Yeah, and I think if you're a saber-toothed tiger, it's better to exist than not to exist. It's better to be alive than not to be alive. But then someone could throw that argument back at me and say, well, if you're a Neanderthal, it's better to exist than not to exist. So it's a sticky, tricky issue. But speaking from my own set of convictions, let's just not bring any human ancestors back. Anything in that line that's north of a chimp, I say we leave it alone, because that's just too volatile. It's just there's no good way to do it. I don't think there's a constructive way to do that. There's no way to do that that doesn't diminish those creatures, those individuals, and us. I think
Right.
that's really the problem. It would be destructive on both ends of the transaction. Whereas with
And even if by not doing it, there are things that that we never are able to learn about our ancestry. Okay, um, uh, let me kind of give you an example. I mean, there are things that we know about the human body and its ability to withstand things like cold and things like that. And how do we know some of these things? Some of these things we know from Nazi experiments.
right,
Okay,
right,
and you know what? It would have been better that we
not to
remained
learn
ignorant,
those things. Yeah,
not to learn those
if
things
that's how you had to learn them.
at the
Yeah,
expense of freezing people to death.
right.
That's some expense is too ethically high to take, even if it means remaining in ignorance. So that's how I feel about potentially bringing back other human species.
I agree. I agree. And I think when you talk about the others, there really is this opportunity to do good, for the environment, to do good for the overall ecosystem, and to do good for us too. I think about the passenger pigeon in particular. People don't know too much about this bird, but this was I'm from Kentucky, and apparently there was a flock of passenger pigeons in the 19th century that numbered something like 2 billion birds. Okay, the skies used to just be dark with these things, and it's a bird that doesn't exist anymore. I guess we ate them out of existence. We just we ate them all back in the 19th century.
Their nesting patterns were too predictable.
Yeah,
They could go to where they were in the trees and just throw nets over them and harvest them by the truckload.
right.
And that's what happened.
Yeah,
And anyway,
and you think the whole interaction between birds and insects and the whole ecosystem had to change with them gone. Um,
right. It
and
left a huge hole. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
so that would be cool to repair that. Plus, it'd be nice to have them back. We messed up, right? We ate the seed corn with the passenger pigeons. Let's bring them back if we can. And the dodo is just such an interesting bird. So I have these two bird examples that I think would be a great place for us to start. Let's bring those back, see how we like it, and then maybe we start on some of that. I mean, saber-toothed tigers and those kinds of things would be a lot harder anyway. Let's face it. You're dealing with a more nearly Jurassic Park scenario at that point, anyhow. Okay. Oh, go ahead.
And we can maybe work on the extinction of fire ants. That'd be great.
Exactly. Well, no, we're not really going to try to extinct any species.
Okay.
The world transformed does not support extinctions. Okay. We need I'll put a disclaimer up on the video that says that.
Me when I said that.
Yeah. He's kidding. All right, here we go. So, to infinity and beyond. I had a few that I would fit in this category, but here's one that I threw in this category immediately, and I understand, Stephen, you do not put in this category, so let's get into this. By 2030, we will see the first demonstration of a technology to control gravity, reducing the pull of gravity on an object by as much as 50%. Let me lay out why this is awesome beyond words and what's your problem, okay? Because anti-gravity is one of the great dreams of science fiction. It's how you get flying cars, flying motorcycles, flying bicycles, hoverboards, flying cities. It all depends on anti-gravity. Plus, really cool spaceships, way cooler spaceships than anything we currently have. So, really, the real future starts as soon as we have anti-gravity. So why are you opposed to the future, Stephen? What's your problem?
Yeah. What is my major malfunction?
Yeah.
Okay.
What part of how awesome this is are you not getting? Okay.
I know my problem is in plausibility, not in how
okay.
awesome it is. I want my Mattel hoverboard as much as the next guy.
Oh, okay.
I think it's gravity is one of those hard problems, like the speed of light and things like that. That I just don't see us solving that by 2030. I would love to see that. Where if you could reduce the weight of like a cargo container by 50%, I mean, you'd be putting things on airplanes a lot more often.
Right.
The economics of transporting things would change dramatically, and talk about enabling you to receive things by drones. If a package is all of a sudden now 50% lighter because we have some sort of anti-gravity technology on our drone, then that would really be an enabler for that, wouldn't it? Yeah, I would love that. Don't think it's going to happen by 2030. I think it's going to be one of those hard problems. If it's solved at all, it'll be 100 years from now. But
fair enough. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm really glad you said that. I'm glad you clarified that, because that gives me the opportunity to point out that these particular strategies aren't about assessing the plausibility, right?
No, not at all.
So if somebody comes and says a prediction sounds horrible to us, but we don't think it's going to happen, it would still be in the no, no, no. Or if it sounds great and we don't think it's going to happen, it's still in the to infinity and beyond. Because look at it this way: if somebody came to you and said, "Hey, we've got anti-gravity. We just figured it out."
I'm on board.
Yeah, it's like I'm on board. Right? If somebody comes to you and says we're mating species of extinct animals and bringing them back, your first answer is, well, wait, which ones are they, right?
Which one are we talking about?
Yeah. So this has a lot more to do with our reaction to the transformation, assuming it can happen, rather than I agree with you completely. Frey does not provide a link. He doesn't give any supporting evidence for this one. And as much as I want to believe in it, I'm with you that I'll be kind of surprised if that one shows up by 2030. And speaking of being surprised, we've run out of time once again. So, Stephen, great talking with you once again. And at least we didn't try to fit all 33 of these into a 30-minute show, huh?
That's right. It wouldn't have worked.
All right. Well, we'll pick up our discussion on Friday. Thank you all for being with us, and until next time, live to see it.